right, we're going to do a brief overview of Nessus Tenable. Okay, we're going to log in with our username. All right. Okay, so it appears everything has been downloaded. Excellent. All right. So here's basically our home page. So this page here is based on users. So if we have multiple users, they could have their own pages. So by default, the first user is basically the admin. Okay, so we have our version. So we have a 20 user license. Okay. Uh, we can upgrade it to professional. We want to pay for the licensing. We can set up a frequency to check for plugins, updates, and all that. And we can have if we had multiple servers, we could have one main server probably hosting all the plugins. And so we would fetch all of them. And encryption. So if we want to change, a new password and stuff like that. And then here's the events. Then we have advanced. Okay. So the main things you may want to set up depending on your organization would be your SNMTP, your mail server. So you can have your scan results being emailed to you. That was something I did when I used to run Nessus to run vulnerability scans. I would have it. I had this up so it would email me reports and other people. So this way, they would have it. Then we can set up our own custom SSL certificate. So if we're in a big Microsoft environment, we could set up a certificate server and have a dedicated server certificate for us. We can set up password managers, so we can set up a mass general password managing. So here we can see how our server is being used, which is nice. Again, we can get some notifications, which we already did. Okay. So my scans, if you would create anything that's custom to yourself, would be in my scans. All scans would basically anybody with a Nessus account can create a scan that everybody can use. That's pretty straightforward. Now we get the plugins. Again, we can scan for templates, things like that. And we have our plugin rules. Okay. Pretty cool. It's relatively newer. I have not really used 10 in a while. So, but everything's pretty much the same. So, first thing you gotta do is create a scan. So here we have our different types of scans that we want to do. So we can scan for host. So this will show us all our different hosts. Like an example, like using Angry IP or something like that, we can do that. This will do a little more than just doing a ping. We can do a ping discovery too. We can create a basic scan, credential scans, advanced scans, malware scans. We can find AI detection. We can do Active Directory to look at some basic. So these here and these right here, these are compliancy. So if you wanted to say, oh, I'm compliant with something, you can, if we had the paid version, we would have these. Now, what that means is you wouldn't be able to alter the scans, but you could make a scan just like this because we have the advanced scan. So let's go to the advanced scan and See how that looks. All right. So now we're in our settings for our new scan. So we'd have a name for the scan, a description, where is this going to sit? If we had multiple folders, what's our target range? So if we had a license, we could do a whole subnet. Always we have to do a block of 20. We can schedule. So once we'd have, I guess we can't do a schedule scan because it gives us, you gotta have the paid version. Okay, good enough. Here, if we had our SMTP server set, we would put in our email address, add filters. So, like an example, one of the things I used to do would be go in here and do CVE and say greater, or let's see, not CVEs, but I would basically say plugin ID equal to, and then put a number in there. Or you can, severity. This is the one I used to use. So I would do like critical, then make a second one with high, and then this way it would only email me the things that I would need to look at. And then I could just log in and look at the rest of the information. So we do that. So we can do some type of discovery. How we're going to do this, we can do a ping. We can use fast network discovery. We can use ARPs, TCP, ICMP to, get to these things. Here are some things that we may not want to do. We may not want to scan networks or at least enable this so it won't be, crashing servers. And the same thing, we're running it on a Novell server. Most people are not even wearing that or have one of those anymore. But this is kind of cool. So wake up on LAN. So if we added create a text document with all the MAC addresses, we could then create that where to wake the machines up and then start after 5 minutes actually running the scan. So that is pretty cool. So we do some stuff like that. So, and we can do service discovery where we can service for certain things. We can do collect data from Active Directory. So if we were part of Active Directory, we can extrapolate that from Active Directory. Here we can do some basic things like brute forcing. So if we want to try to brute force some credentials, we can. If we were dealing with Oracle databases, we can do some stuff. We do some web stuff here. So if we know we're going to be hitting, if we're building a scan for a web server, we can turn these on. And then this will, kind of turn some of the features for websites. So again, this is very custom and tailored. Then if we're doing a lot of Windows stuff, we can also, collect this information. And we can also do a scan for malware where it looks for certain hashes if it sees it, so let us know. And then if we have some type of database, it can do that type of detection. Again, we can generate a kind of report. In advance, we can then stop scanning when the system becomes, unresponsive. We can scan the IPs in a random order. We can automatically detect for SSH, disclaimer prompts to see, like banners. So there are a couple different things we can do here. Okay. And then we can put in our credentials. We can do SMP3, SSH, Windows. So we can basically go into some appliances, Linux, and Windows. Not a problem. Then if we're trying to be compliant with something, we can grab that compliancy list and then, configure the rest to make it compliant. Here's what's the part where you pay for is the description of keeping these signatures up to date. So these are all the different categories of signatures that we can do. And then when we click on it, so let's take an example, Windows. Here is all the different updates. So we can look at Are people running 7-zip, different applications, and we can see are they what version they're running. We can detect are they running a bad version or something like that. So we can kind of collect all this different information on this. We can do Adobe Acrobat. We can do a lot of the Adobe programs to make sure they're up to date. So that's kind of nice. One of the things I like to use, I create is this service detection. So as an example in here, we can do different things. So we can look for our machines have, uh, you know, do they have AirPlay detected? Or do they have Apple TV? Or are these things Apple TV devices? We can look at, are they running some type of Bitcoin operation? So we can do a lot of these different things we can see in here. So we can see, are they running some type of Cisco products, Cisco products? So we can see a lot of these different things and then see if they're up to date. So maybe we want to make sure nobody's got Dockers installed on their workstations. We could, create a scan just for that type of check. And what we would do is we turn everything else off except for this and one or two other random things. And then we can do that. You know, we can scan for things with the word wired in it. There are different things we can do. FTP, we can look for the other FTP servers. We can look at other servers that are running on here, like Halo network server. We can look for a home run in. Now, I'm not talking about the home run in pizza, but I'm talking about the home run streaming software, TV software, the hardware software. So there are a ton of different things we can scan for and make that a particular scan. So, I mean, there are tons of different plugins we can do just by going in there and looking at these things. So again, you can see we can do a scan just on backdooring. We can do a scan on just trying to brute force different things that it comes across. So there are a ton of different things. I mean, there's 250 checks just for DNS. I mean, that's pretty nuts, you know. So we do have a lot of things that we can, look at. So we have Azure, we have Amazon clouds. So, we have different things here we can look for and make the appropriate, changes or submission that we need to. Like that Palo Alto checks. We can be looking for if people got P2P download software and wondering who does. We can do SCADA. Again, we can create multiple different scans and do those. All right, so that's kind of a quick overview. See you in the next video. Oh, and then what we would do before I cancel out is then we would, let's just say, all right, basic scan, and then we would give it a name, and then we can give it IPs in here, or we'd save it for later. And then here we can just call it basic scan, and we can hit save. We don't have, I guess we do have to have a target installed at this point. And then I think we could do something like this. There we go.